Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So before I jump in, I want to say thank you guys so much for all of the support on the last video. We are nearing in on 900 subs. By the time this releases, we may very well be there. And that is one step closer to our first major channel milestone of 1,000 subs. And to celebrate getting closer and reining in 1,000 subs, we're going to be doing a live stream on Friday, July 8th, starting at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. If you are interested, it is twitch.tv/TLSG Snap. The link will be in the description and in a comment down below. If you guys are interested in joining the live stream, follow the link down below. I'm going to be configuring the channel throughout the day, today and tomorrow, to get ready for our Friday stream. And hopefully we can rein in 1,000 subs live on stream. So jumping into today's mystery card, we have Sera, and as you can tell, I already pulled the card. I actually did a lot of recording yesterday morning with this card for today's video, and I just did not feel like I had a good grasp on the deck archetype, and I didn't feel like it was a high quality video. So I went ahead and I scrapped it. I did a lot of practicing throughout today, getting used to the archetype, getting used to how the deck plays, to make sure that I am giving you guys high quality content. So I ended up scrapping the original video and we are starting completely from scratch. So Sera is a pretty interesting card with the ongoing ability of cards in your hand cost 1 less, but a minimum of 1, so you can't go below 1. So this is really good in a couple of deck archetypes. One of them being a Wave Sera Odin combination deck, where you drop Wave on turn 3, Sera on turn 4, which allows you to drop Odin on turn 5 to re-trigger Wave. Then you can drop 2 cards on turn 6 when your opponents can only drop 1. Now, this deck feels a little inconsistent. When you hit the combination, it feels really, really good, but you have to draw those particular cards in that particular order and have them readily available by turn 3, 4, and 5 to get the upside. So it's not as consistent as we would want in a deck. Which brings us to our deck of the day, which we have named Sera-Two-Nin, which is a bad pun on serotonin, but I chuckled whenever I thought of it, and so I stuck with it. So this deck focuses on swarming out your cards on the last couple of turns. That way you can really push out a lot of power. It is very similar to a Kazaar Zoo deck, but it doesn't have the downside of having 1-drops that can be destroyed by Kazaar. So the biggest general idea behind the deck is that you drop Okoye and Nakia prior to turn 5. Other than that, you just kind of sit on your hand and let cards build up. On turn 5, you drop Sera, and then on turn 6, you should be able to dump almost all of your hand. You usually have to play maybe 1 card prior to that, but on turn 6, you should be able to drop the rest of your hand and make some major swings happen. And the reason we're not running Killmonger as a tech card for the Kazaar Zoo deck is we can typically outpower them as long as we get the same pieces of the combo. So if they get Okoye and we get Okoye, we should be able to outpower them. If they draw Nakia and we draw Nakia, same thing. Now, if they get Nakia and we don't, this deck, and the reason I was having so much trouble navigating it, is that it does not run like a normal deck. This is not intended to win as high of a percentage of games as you can. It's designed to be consistent. It's designed to really pump out a lot of power and swing games. And so to do that, you have to play it a little bit differently. I've found that retreating whenever you are at a card disadvantage, whenever you have a location that is not good for this style of deck or this style of play, there is much less harm in quickly resetting, jumping into a new game, versus trying to push out a game that is not in your favor anyways. Now, the biggest counter to this deck right now is Wave. A well-timed Wave on turn 5 completely shuts us down from being able to dump our entire hand, and at that point, we just need to retreat. There is almost never a chance where you can win at that point. In certain situations, maybe, because you can drop 2 cards on turn 6 at that point, so you can drop a Chavez and something else, but you would have to have the lanes really, really close prior to that turn. And so really quickly running through what each of the cards are intended to do. First, we're going to have our buff cards, Okoye and Nakia. These are designed to buff up our deck and our hand respectively. Since we're holding our cards in hand, Nakia can really target and hit a large number of cards to get the most upside out of her buff. And then we have 4 cards that I consider really high power, high swing potential cards in Angela, Mojo, Strong Guy, and Bishop. They all are intended to have a lot of power at the end of the game. So Angela, when you play a card here, +2 power. So by the time you fill up a lane, she's going to be +7 unless you do some sneaky buffing or moving of cards. She's going to be a 7 power 2-cost card, which is a good power ratio for 2 cost, even better when you can drop it for 1. And then you have Mojo. Mojo you want to hold until very, very late in the game, if at all possible, because otherwise, it gives your opponent some strategic information, and they know either to pump out more power there before they cap it out, or to not cap that location out so you don't get the upside. So you want to sneak this into a lane that you know is going to be full, and you know you're going to get the upside from. Strong Guy is our card that's going to be buffed up from having an empty hand. We can do this by Hell Cow, which is going to discard 2 cards from our hand. So it is a buffed up blade. And then we have Bishop. So Bishop, we ideally want to drop pretty early in the game, at least earlier than the other cards, so that we can get the most upside out of this when you play a card, gain +1 power. And then we have Armor to protect our upside if we are running up against a counter, a mirror match, or a card that is running tech cards to try and stop us, so something like a Shang-Chi. Armor is going to be able to protect one of our lanes to make sure that we get the... So actually, I was thinking about it. We're going to call a quick audible. We're changing Armor for Mysterio. Mysterio being able to fill in slots that we may not have been able to play into, like Sanctum Sanctorum. And if we get him buffed up with Nakia and Okoye, those tokens are going to have the upside as well. So I think overall, we're going to be able to pump out more power with Mysterio and lean into the fact that we are trying to play our high-powered cards, and we're going to split up our 9+ power cards anyways. So dropping an Armor seems counterproductive, so we are going to run Mysterio instead to kind of give ourselves a little bit of an edge and pump out a little bit more power. And then Wolverine. Wolverine seems like a strange choice in this deck, but he is intended to be one of the last 2 cards in your hand where you can discard him with Hell Cow. That way, whenever you drop Ghost Rider to resummon your discarded card, you can guarantee that it's going to be Chavez. So on turn 6, you draw into Chavez. If you have Wolverine, Hell Cow, and Ghost Rider in hand, you can drop Hell Cow, and then Ghost Rider. When Hell Cow discards Wolverine, it's going to go into a random lane, and then Chavez is going to be resummoned at that point. And you'll be able to clear your hand, you'll be able to get the Strong Guy buff, a lot of good utility from having Wolverine and the Hell Cow discard. And then we have Sera, which is our new card, and you can tell I have played with it quite a bit. I have it all the way to Legendary already. I really wanted to get a grip and a handle on this archetype before I jumped in, because it is so different than my normal archetypes that I run. I wanted to be able to pilot it and navigate it well. And lastly, we have Chavez. So Chavez being a card that we can either discard on turn 6. If we have the Sera drop, we can play it along with one other card if we need to. We can discard it, resummon it. We can just leave it in our hand. We have a couple of different uses, but it evens out our draws for the rest of the game. So for this deck to perform optimally, we need Nakia and Sera by turn 4 and 5 to get the most upside out of our deck archetype, and having Chavez will help make sure that we draw that a little bit more consistently. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and jump into the games. I'll see you guys there. So our first game up, we are going against Thanos, the one and only Thanos. In our hand, we do have our Sera, which is a good sign. Now we just need to draw into Nakia by turn 4. So to anticipate the potential for drawing into Nakia and to have the ability to fully discard our hand by turn 6, what I want to do is drop our Bishop on turn 3. So then even if I draw into Nakia on turn 4, I still get the upside of being able to play her and not be able to not getting stuck with cards in my hand after the game ends. And so we're going to go ahead and pass. This deck makes for some really, really good games, or really quick games. So we can do Nakia into the cloning vats, and then we can do Nakia again next turn. Maybe we forego our Strong Guy buff at this point, and we just go with pushing out raw power, which I think is going to be a good play. And it looks like they are running the same thing. But with this deck, so let's say they had dropped Nakia there and we didn't have Nakia in hand. At this point, we would probably retreat. This deck is meant for high turnover games, high quantity, but minimizing and mitigating your losses while capitalizing and maximizing your gains. So that means retreating whenever it's not in your advantage and pushing for higher cube games whenever it is. And so is Thanos going to opt to drop the second Nakia into cloning vats again to get a third one, is what I am curious of. Because if so, that makes the cloning vat lane very, very difficult for them to win. But it makes the other ones a little bit easier. So they do opt to go for the third Nakia, which I think may be a little bit on the greedy side. So I'm going to drop our Sera. That way we can start pumping out power. And maybe they dump some of their hand this turn, and maybe they dump some of this. Actually, it may have been better had I done Nakia, and then I could have dropped both Nakia and Mysterio this turn. Mysterio first, and then Nakia to have some really large power across the board pretty easily. That may have been the play, actually. Okay, so we are going to drop our Sera in mid so that it doesn't get shot somewhere we don't want it to. And then when we... Okay. Okay, then. So they drop a Professor X, so they have an additional Professor X. So we need to keep that in mind, unfortunately. And so this being the final turn, we have a 5-cost Chavez. We have a 1-cost 9-power Mysterio, who maintains the buffs that we put on him. So is it ever a matter of doing something like this? We are only dropping 2 cards, whereas normally we want to pump out a lot of power really, really quickly. I think we actually end up losing this one, but I want to see it play out because we're going to have a pretty large Mysterio here. We got the power here. I think it's worth at least watching and letting to see how it plays out. And so they only drop 1 card. So what card is it? Did they just drop a 16-power Hulk? But we put our real Mysterio in the left lane, so we do swing that one. We swing the mid lane. Very, very fortunate that they were running a high-power deck with their Nakias, so kind of strange. So I think we got a little bit lucky. I honestly think it would have been a much better play line to do the second Nakia and the third along with Mysterio here to pump out a lot of power across the entire board, and I think it would have saved us a lot of headache. Okay, so for our next game, we have Asgard, which is the current featured location, to go along with the thematic release of Thor, Love and Thunder. So Asgard, after turn 4, whoever is winning here draws 2 cards. So I've played around with the best way to play into this location, and it's awkward. So if we win this one on turn 4, ideally we want to drop Sera on turn 5. So it's not something where we would be able to drop our Nakia after getting the extra cards. It just becomes a little bit clunky. But I do think we invest some resources in there, and then maybe we forego the Sera play. But ideally, we still drop our Nakia on turn 3. That frees us up some bandwidth, and they're running a wave deck, so that is pretty unfortunate. So if it looks like we're going to be at a big disadvantage, we'll go ahead and retreat, rinse, and repeat. But with wave, nobody was able to play a card last turn because it capped them at 4. So pretty unfortunate that is how it fell. Otherwise, we would have dropped Sera early. It would have been pretty decent. But I think we drop our Nakia here. We anticipate them trying to win this lane. Maybe they have a Viper. They're going to send the Hood our way. Nope, they have an Elektra and a Carnage. So they do win the lane, the Asgard +2 upside, which is okay. That makes it a little bit easier for us to dump our hand, potentially on the last turn. So we do have our discard mechanism, so it is a potential. And so we're going to drop Sera in mid because we're going to drop Sera onto the right side. We want to be able to dump Angela at the first card in a slot to get the most upside out of additional cards being played there. And another good upside to having Mysterio in this deck, Mysterio counts as 3 cards played. 1 card played in each lane, not added, but played. So Bishop will actually buff up 3 times for 1 Mysterio drop. And so it really comes down to what card gets pulled into Grand Central here. If it is something that is less than fortunate, so it's a Hell Cow, which is not the card we want to be pulled in there, because then we are going to discard our cards at random and we lose a lot of advantage. So with that, we're going to be able to drop all 3 cards. Let's quickly calculate. So we have Angela, we have Mysterio, And so I think we actually still have a decent shot here. I don't think they are going a completely wide deck. And so I think the buffed up Mysterio tokens, along with Bishop triggering and Angela triggering 2 times, I think may be enough to swing the game for us. So let's go ahead and let it play out. I think we have a pretty good shot here. And they use Arrow, which typically would move all cards played there this turn, but we capped out the location with just 1, which happened to be our Angela. So kind of unfortunate in that, but I think we can swing the other locations far enough that we will win. And so we do. We swing 2 of the 3 and bring it in for the win. So pretty fortunate that we were able to have that lane full enough that Arrow didn't have a bigger impact in that scenario. Next up we have Banana Chucho. So we have our Bishop in hand, so we're going to want to drop that prior to turn 5. Otherwise, if we get a Nakia, we'll drop that, and then if not, then we wait until turn 5. So that changes things. Mindscape being the location that... Sorry, I got my anime glasses on. Mindscape being the location that swaps your hand at the end of turn 5. So we are actually going to want to push out as much power as we possibly can early. So I think we may forego dropping Sera. I think we do wait 1 turn and drop Nakia next turn, and then we start dumping our resources as much as possible. And so being that if we swap hands, they're hopefully not going to be able to drop everything and discard it all. So we will drop our Nakia into Mindscape, and then next turn we will drop 4 mana. We want to drop as much as possible. So we're going to drop both our Angela and our Wolverine. Next turn we're going to drop a Bishop and a Mysterio to really pump out as much power as we possibly can. Unfortunately, Mysterio didn't get the Nakia buff. That would have been really impactful, but as long as we get Bishop out, each Mysterio token is going to count. They played us like a fiddle. And so then they had a Hell Cow, which discarded their cards. Very unfortunate. So in which case, do we still play the same, or do we drop our Sera? Do we drop our Sera, and then we can drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can drop 6 power, which would allow us to buff up our Bishop several times over. And then Mysterio being a really good slot. I can't believe it took me so long to decide to slot Bishop in, or to slot Mysterio in here, because he counts as a card played in each lane for 1 cost. You get 3 upside for your other big name cards. And so we're going to put him here because we want to win this location. We want to almost guarantee that we win this location. So Mysterio is going to go here. It's going to trigger Angela here, and then I think we do that. So that'd be 10. Actually, if they drop a Chavez here, that's not enough to swing that location. So in that case, let's undo. Let's do our Bishop and then our Mysterio here. So that's going to count as a card played. So it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it'll be 8, 9. So that'll give us more upside. That's going to give us 14 total power instead of just 10. And then of course, we're going to trigger Angela twice here. I think we have a pretty good shot at winning this. I think we can swing this mid lane because I'm anticipating a Chavez. Either that or they dump their hand, and then we just have to try and compete with this location in them having a buffed up strong guy. So I could have read this one wrong, but they did drop their Chavez in mid, and then they dropped some swarms. So that being the case, we are still able to pull this mid location with our Mysterio, with our Mysterio tokens buffing up both of these cards. So it's just beautiful. Like it's so but it's not going to be enough, is it? We're not going to swing this left location. Oh, but the Baxter building coming in. The Baxter building coming in absolutely critical there. So we set up the play, and then we lost the play somewhere along the lines, and we thought we lost, and then that was a roller coaster from start to finish. I think Mysterio is absolutely the card. It performs so much better than our armor did, and that card single-handedly in this deck archetype helped us win this location. When I recorded before, it felt like the archetype was just missing something, and I can't believe I overlooked Mysterio for so long. He is absolutely clutch in this deck, being able to buff up Bishop 3 times, Angela once, even if it's just a token. If it had gotten hit with Nakia, each token would have the +2. It's like the icing on top of the cake. I feel like that is what sets this deck list apart from what I was running before. Okay, so we do draw into our Nakia right off the bat. So that is always a good, promising sign. I don't think we use this extra power that we gain from Tinkerer's Workshop this turn. I think we hold it and just kind of hold off, let us draw some more cards. We're going to drop Bishop on turn 3. We're going to drop Nakia on turn 4. Hopefully we draw into Sera. If not, then we start dumping our cards on turns 5 and 6. Is it ever worth it to drop Okoye here? I think we hold off. I think I'm going to drop Bishop here next turn. When I do Nakia, I'll drop both of them, or maybe it'd be more worthwhile to hold Okoye until the very end of the game. We do have our discard component, so that frees up a mana or an energy in having to play Wolverine. So maybe we don't need to drop Okoye just yet, because we're going to draw 2 more cards. Nakia is going to buff up Okoye anyways, so I think we get the guaranteed upside of +2 rather than the potential upside of the next 2 draws, one of which being Chavez, which of course we're not going to be able to play outright. I think we just do this. And then we both dropped Bishop into Tinkerer's Workshop. They dropped Mr. Negative, a pretty cool variant for Mr. Negative. So I don't know what they're running. So we didn't draw into Sera. So what we need to do is dump our hand ASAP. So do we risk putting something in the danger room, or do we take the little bit less upside and do something like this? I think we're going to do Angela here. We're going to do Mysterio into the Angela lane. We're going to do Okoye into the Bishop lane. That's going to free us up to drop these 3 cards next turn, which we don't necessarily need to drop Wolverine. We're going to discard it. So maybe instead of that, we let it discard. That way we can guarantee that it goes over into the danger room, and we get that +5 there. So I think we just let that play out as is. And they throw in a Limbo turn 7. So that actually frees us up some bandwidth here. So almost luckily we didn't draw into our Sera, so we're able to get some additional upside out of that magic play. So I'm really interested in what deck list they're running, because running a Bishop and a Mr. Negative I haven't seen before. The Mr. Negative and Magic makes sense, but the Bishop play is an interesting one. And so because we have the extra turn, I think I'm going to go ahead and just play Chavez outright. And we're going to play her on the left side. I think there is a very good possibility that we lose this lane because of the Onslaught Citadel. So if they drop their Devil Dino, their Iron Man, an inversed Devil Dino Iron Man, then we're not going to be able to compete there. So we're going to need to compete in the other locations. And I think we do that by pumping our power over here. So let's go ahead and push our Chavez over into the left lane. Next turn, we're going to drop our Hell Cow, our Mojo, both potentially in the right lane. And so they drop a lot of resources for this turn. So then they have an Angela and a Forge. What deck list is this? I'm so intrigued. And then their Iron Man over in Danger Room. Can it get destroyed? Yes! 25% chance working in our favor. But interestingly enough, Mystique is still going to grab that Iron Man ongoing bonus, even though he got destroyed. So we got very, very fortunate there. So I think we have to... Do we roll the dice? I think we have to. I was going to say we drop our strong guy, we drop our Hell Cow, and then we drop our Mojo here, which would guarantee we'd at least get our Wolverine in this lane. So a very non-conventional deck list. I commend you for running such a unique list, and had the Danger Room not triggered there, that would have been your win hands down. All right, and so we have Predators and Asgard as our location. So I'm always a little bit torn. I think we're going to drop Angela followed by Bishop. It really depends on what we draw here. I think we lean into getting the additional cards and pumping out the additional value. That way we can really capitalize on the Bishop upside. Wow, they put a lot of resources there. So that gets our strong guy. So I guess us not having a full hand is not necessarily an issue anymore. And then our Wolverine gets hit with the Iceman, which is actually an okay card to get hit because we don't really need to play him outright because we're able to discard into him. And at the start of turn 6, swap hands. So in that case, I am actually going to... I'm still going to try and win this location because I think we're going to be able to discard enough cards that we'll be able to pump out a lot of power quickly. And then we're going to stick them with some cards that hopefully they're not able to clear to trigger their strong guy buff. So we do have the Ghost Rider piece of this combo. So I think what we do, and we're going to be able to push out just about all of our power. I think we go ahead and drop our Okoye. We manually drop our Wolverine. And then next turn, we're going to be able to do both Hell Cow and Ghost Rider to either summon Sera or summon whatever else we draw into. And so we're going to be able to make sure that our hand is empty by the time it switches over to them. Yes, that'll let them do the strong guy buff, but it's going to give them a very weak last turn. That's not what you want. So I thought Asgard had already triggered. So I did put resources there. Unfortunately, it swings it in our favor. But if we could do something like this into this, maybe we can trigger it. Or maybe we don't want to. Maybe we do something like, maybe we don't discard at all. Maybe we do something like this, where we put our resources over on the right side. We're going to get the Angela and the Bishop from these other two lanes. We put a Mojo out to try and see if we can't... Actually, no. So that splits our resources a little bit. I think had I went back, I would have put Mysterio here. And the reason I switched over into the mid lane is because if we draw into our Chavez whenever we swap hands, we're going to want to be able to cap this lane out to potentially get the upside from it. I think that would be the only thing that would allow us to win. And so then I opted to switch it, but that does put 6 power here instead of the other locations. Wow, that switched awfully fast. That was very, very impressive. So we do get our Chavez, so I think we still go ahead and go with the play of playing it in mid, because they're not going to be able to dump their hand. We gave them too many cards. Well, they have the Hell Cow. So do we ever play off the fact that we think they're going to anticipate us dropping an additional card here, and we just drop our Chavez here, so that our Mysterio, who's going to be a 6 power Mysterio, will make this lane 17, so then they could easily drop enough resources to swing it in a Hell Cow. All they would have to drop is a Hell Cow. I think we have to go with Blade or Chavez in mid, and then hope that they cap this out, but they don't. So they drop their Hell Cow, which brings them down to 1 card. Is this something that is going to discard their additional card? And they bring back Beast, which, oh my god. Such a very unfortunate resurrection. A very, very low roll in that resurrection. So they had a 1 in 3 shot of pulling Beast, which returned their cards to their hand. We shouldn't necessarily have won that one, but we did get the lucky upside. Okay, so next up we do have Yeet. We have Okoye that's going to buff up all of our cards in our deck. We just need to draw into Nakia prior to turn 5. So ideally we could draw our turn 3 player, maybe Bishop on turn 3. And then Death's Domain. So when you play a card here, destroy it. So that's going to be a pretty difficult location for us. We would have to get the upside of having our Wolverine discarded or something similar to make that lane possible. So kind of unfortunate that that location comes up. So they are running maybe a zoo deck, maybe a 1-cost zoo deck. And we do get cloning vats here. So the thing with Death's Domain and Mysterio, since it counts as card played and not added, it would destroy the card, the Mysterio card, when it gets dropped here. I think maybe what we do, I think we drop our Bishop here. And then if we draw into Nakia, that's great. We're gonna really need, it looks like they're running a movement deck. So we're gonna need our Wolverine and a discard card. So next turn, we're going to need to draw into our Hellcow to have a chance here. So I think at this point, we're foregoing the Sera drop, and we're just going to drop our cards because we're going to be duplicating them with cloning vats. So I think we're going to drop our Angela and our Mojo. He has another... Oh, never mind. Duh. That's a pretty nice location for him. So... if we draw into our discard card, we don't, unfortunately. Okay. So do we do something like, where we do that? Next turn we'll draw into Chavez. Maybe we do the real Mysterio here to cap this lane out. Knowing that they're pushing a lot of power into left lane, I think we need to put Mysterio here. And then that's going to cap this one out. So if they do drop a Heimdall and move these, we'll still be able to win this location. And that frees us up the space to drop Chavez in this left lane. We can't drop Chavez because of the big house. So we'll need to call an audible. So depending on what they drop here, we can kind of react from there. But I think we're probably going to end up dropping our Mojo into this lane, being the closest thing that's going to get the closest to that high power as we possibly can. And so then they have multiple man in the left lane. If they drop Heimdall, it's going to push their card. It's going to buff this one up. But I just don't think it will be enough. If they drop Heimdall, that'll let us trigger our Mojo here. So I think what we do is we drop our Mojo, and then we just drop a couple of cards. They're gonna get destroyed, but it'll push him back because he gets destroyed here, but it's gonna push him right back. And then I think we just maybe go ahead and drop our Mysterio as well, just to buff up our Bishop a little bit further. Ideally, even if he pushes Vulture over, we'd still be able to take this lane with our Mysterio, our hidden Mysterio, and the Mojo buff. So we're going to let this one play out. I don't know that we win. If this is the Heimdall, I think we have a good shot here. And so, of course, their Vulture gets pretty large, but we get a pretty big upside in the fact that we dropped our Mysterio there, our real Mysterio, and Angela buffs up. Our Bishop's going to buff up here. So we are going to be able to actually sneak this game out. And I really didn't think we were going to be able to with Death's Domain. So just a very non-conventional play line in this game. And we were able to take this lane by just 1 power. So very, very, very close game. It's just a good thing we dropped our real Mysterio there. The Mojo buff came in very, very clutch. Overall, that felt very satisfying. Not a conventional play, which right now we're seeing probably 80% Zoo decks. So it's nice to see a deck that is not Swarm. So I commend you, Yeet, for running a deck that may not be as powerful as the common Swarm deck that we're seeing. So I am going to go ahead and end the video here. Once again, I thank you for all of your support, and I look forward to celebrating 1,000 with you on Friday over at twitch.tv/TLSG-Snap. So overall, this deck list feels really, really strong. I think this is going to be a strong contender for climbing in this ladder. I think it has an advantage over Kazaar Zoo, and I think it has an advantage over some of the other common decks in the meta right now, only largely being countered by locations like Sanctum Sanctorum or cards like Wave. And so if we see those more commonly, then we would definitely need to switch out, run a different deck list. But for now, if we're running up against and mashing up against other Swarms, I feel like we are able to outpower their Swarm with our Swarm. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.